Hey everyone, this is Diesel from Imagineyourgoddess, and today, by request, I am going over a Perfect Raizer build. Now, just to let you guys know, I don't have one of these myself. I want to thank Blackstar for the cards I needed to create the skeleton of this deck. There's a lot of little changes I'd like to make, and there's a few huge changes as soon as BT09 comes out. So just kind of take this as what it is, just something fun to mess around with and start with, and I'll just get straight into it. The starting Vanguard is Turboraizer. It can be Turboraizer or Battleraizer, it does not matter. It just has to be a Raizer that you can pull from the deck. So the deck doesn't run any non-trigger zeros. So it runs 4 stand, 4 draw, 4 crit, and 4 heal. Rainbow triggers all around. It uses the stand triggers because stand triggers have Raizer in them. Come BT09, you don't have to worry about that as much, and you'd only have to run 1 stand. My particular suggestion would be to fill those empty stand places with critical triggers. Add a lot more pressure to the deck because the deck is already sitting on pressure. So that would be my suggestion. Let's move into grade 1s. Grade 1, I have 4 copies of Raizer Custom. Again, it's a Raizer. It lets you put into the soul for perfect. And it's not a terrible card. A 12k attacker on turn 1 is pretty decent. Of course, that means that you cannot use your Raizers to boost because they get shuffled back into your deck. My suggestion on this is to go ahead and leave them back at the beginning, early game, leave a couple on the field, because if you're lucky, you'll ride into Raizer, and then you'll ride into high-powered Raizer Custom, and then you only need 2 boosters on the field to put into the soul for a Perfect Raizer. That's my suggestion. Do what you need to do. Past that, we have 4 copies of the 8k booster, Tough Boy. Very good card behind Perfect Raizer when he has his ability going off. That's a 31,000 column with double crit. Your opponent needs to deal with that every single time. The next one is Twist and Dancing Announcer Shout, the drop and draw. I like this card. It gives you something to work with. When the other Raizers come out in BT09, you might switch them out. That's up to you. And then, of course, 4 Perfect Shields, because in our meta, 4 Perfect Shields is almost a necessity. Moving into the grade 2s, we have 4 copies of high-powered Raizer Custom. For a reason on why to use them and a suggestion on how to use them, just see what I just said about Raizer Custom. Then we have 1 copy of Brutal Jack and 2 copies of Magician Girl Kirara. Now, I would rather be running 3 Kirara, but I don't have them. I borrowed a couple from a friend of ours. Special thanks to Dean for hooking me up with those. If you can run 3 Kirara, it works really well in this deck because getting that extra draw focus is helpful because you lose a lot the turn that you play out Perfect Raizer. Try to use them, try to get that boost. It's not a big deal that you're using your counterblasts because your counterblasts don't mean anything for anything else in the deck. Then we have 4 copies of the 10k Vanilla King of Sword. Again, just to make 18k columns, it's useful, and there's not much better to play. Next set, I believe there's another grade 2 Raizer coming out. It's something to think about. Okay, and then finally we'll get into the grade 3s. Obviously, 4 copies of Perfect Raizer. Perfect Raizer is the bread and butter of this deck, and if you can ride into him and have his ability inside, by himself he is a 23 on your turn. You are going to need another Raizer on the field, but usually by then you'll have 2 Perfect Raizers in your hand, so you can ride Perfect Raizer, sweep in everything, play a Perfect Raizer, and you're good. You're set up. 23,000 on 1 attack with double crit is pretty good, and it forces your opponent to work. But just like my Aggravane build, the hardest turn of this deck is the turn after you ride into Perfect Raizer. Once you're starting to get that effect, you can start rebuilding your hand and doing what you need to do. But, as is, it suffers a bit when that time comes up. The other grade 3 right now is 4 copies of Mr. Invincible. Mr. Invincible allows you to fix for the problems that you've been having before. Getting that damage on flip is good if you've got those Kiraras out, but the main thing is that you're hoping to put some Raizers in the soul, so that when you do ride into your perfect Raizer, he has his ability. This is like a bare bones build. Like I said, when you change out the stands, put them into criticals. You could also put in 6 draw 6 critical, because getting that extra draw power wouldn't be a bad idea. If you guys want to see more about this deck, you have any questions, you can like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to ask us about other decks that we have planned. Again, thanks again to Dean and Blackstar for hooking us up with the cards in order to make this deck profile. And this is Diesel from Imagine Your Goddess. I'll talk to you soon.